That's how we do it here in the Northwoods. Now I hear that some of you wranglers and cowpunchers and owl hoots and horse thieves have been reading westerns in the month of June. That sounds real pretty. June on the range. I tell you what, let's go sit down and talk about some books. Welcome back to McNulty's Book Corral. All right, so we're going to talk about westerns today, and we're talking about the man named L'Amour, Louis L'Amour. And we're going to talk about 3 books that I'm going to recommend to you. Briefly, the first one is High Lonesome, which is this. I'll have a scan pop up. Get a good look at this. I'm going to read to you a quote from page 91 of this edition. So if you can get this edition, the quote should appear close to that on any of them. Listen to this statement that Louis L'Amour makes in High Lonesome. The man on horseback, the lone riding man, the lone thinking man, possessed an image of himself that was in part his own, in part a piece of all the dime novels he had read. For no man is free of the image his literature imposes upon him. And the dime novel made the Western hero a knight errant, a man on horseback, rescuing the weak and helpless. That is a quote from Louis L'Amour from page 91 of High Lonesome, one of my favorite Louis L'Amour novels. This is a typical Louis L'Amour novel. It is one of his shorter novels, and the original copyright on this, and this is important, you should always look at that if you're tracking this. This is 62, so he'd been at it for about a decade, maybe a little more than a decade by the time he published this book. So he's got some mileage on him for this. It's a great book. It's typical of L'Amour. Its themes are redemption, love. You have Considine, and we have Dave Spanier and his daughter, and the tropes that L'Amour was criticized for because he used the same plot devices again and again, and that would be, the solitary loner who falls in love with the woman, and he has to prove himself in some way. He has to overcome an obstacle. These are common tropes for the Western, but L'Amour sometimes he would use the same scenes over and over again. For example, in many of his novels, you have scenes where they're in a canyon. There's a lot of rock climbing and moving around trying to survive in the wilderness with these canyons and climbing things and so forth. You'll see that again in Flint, which is the third recommendation today. And you'll see it even a little bit in Last of the Breed. So he was criticized for that. He was criticized for using the same plot devices over and over again. And it's a valid criticism, but that does not mean he was a bad writer. He was a great writer. And so with High Lonesome, I think it's one of his better standard novels. He has a lot of stuff like this where he did that. The writing is pretty crisp and clean. So this quote that I read to you, the man on horseback, the lone riding man, that is a direct tribute to Zane Grey, William MacLeod Rain, Max Brand, and all of those other writers from the early part of the last century who really helped create and popularize the mythic West. And that is something he was acutely aware of, and so he gave a tip of his hat to those writers without naming them. It's a beautiful little passage on page 91. Great book. So if you're unfamiliar with Louis L'Amour, and I know you booktubers, some of you booktubers are reading him for the first time, thank you, Michael K. Vaughan. I think it's really great that you created this trend on YouTube for June on the Range. Wonderful thing that you've done. And my only question is, you don't have to wait till June, guys. You can read Westerns year-round. Add it to your diet. High Lonesome. Anyways, High Lonesome is one of those that I'm recommending today out of the 3. Then we get to one of my all-time favorites, Last of the Breed. This was 1986, I believe, which was the year my daughter was born. And yes, July of 86. And I have multiple copies of this. I have one up here at the cabin. I think I have 1 or 2 at home, and so forth. So anyways, you guys know I'm a collector in addition to a reader, so I apologize for repeating myself. I would hope to encourage you to collect as well. And so, Last of the Breed is about U.S. Air Force Major Joe Mack. He is a Native American. His experimental aircraft is brought down in Russia, and he's forced to survive. He is captured, he escapes, and he is forced to survive in Siberia. This is, without a doubt, one of Louis L'Amour's top novels. It's a much longer book than some of his westerns. A lot of his westerns are not that long. He did get into writing longer books later. And this is one of my favorites. This is one of those I read every few years because it's so damn good. And that's just the way it is. If you have not read Last of the Breed and you've read some of the shorter westerns and you're thinking, okay, you like L'Amour, but you want this. And so this is contemporary, by the way, obviously. This is a contemporary western, if you can call it that, It's one of the great adventure novels from the 80s. I remember when this came out, it was like a huge deal, big deal, because he was creating something different than he had done before. And L'Amour did that in the last decade of his life. He wrote some different books. They're all good in their own way. Some of them are not necessarily true westerns. The Walking Drum, which is a great book. Anyways, recommendation: High Lonesome, Last of the Breed. You got to do it. And finally, we're going to get to Flint, which I recommend Flint to everybody that has not read L'Amour. Louis L'Amour's Flint is probably one of his top 10 westerns as well. It's a little longer than his normal one. What was the year on this? I don't quite remember myself. Let's take a look. It was 1960. So, yeah, November of 1960. So it's a little longer. I'm not even going to talk about the plot. This has those tropes, those images, those motifs. There's a canyon. There's a really cool cave where a guy keeps his stuff. Climbing in secret canyons and so forth. These would become motifs that L'Amour would use again and again and again. And for those of you like me who have explored the West, L'Amour explored the West on foot and by car too. He's hiked to some of these places, and it's absolutely correct. There are so many canyons and so many little rocky alcoves and secret arroyos that if you don't walk it, you'll never know it's there. And I think it's cool that he did that. Again, he was criticized constantly for that. When he was alive, the criticism I heard was just rip off the cover because it's the same book as the last one he just wrote. That's kind of unfair. I think he was better than that. But people have an expectation of L'Amour, and sometimes he did do the same things over and over again. But I think one of the things that comes up with me, I see a lot of people criticizing L'Amour who are Western writers. That's always been the case. I think that's just jealousy on their part. They might have written 600 books, but they were never as popular as Louis L'Amour, because Louis L'Amour struck a chord with people. His characters, you are involved with his characters, and you are deeply, deeply involved in the story. So good for him to do that, So those are my three L'Amours. In a previous episode here, I talked about The Lonesome Gods, so you can consider that the fourth recommendation for the month of June, even though I think that appeared in May. I think it's exciting that people that don't read westerns are looking at westerns. And L'Amour and Zane Grey, William McLeod Rain, I'm going to be covering in detail. Not this month. I have some other things I'm going to be doing. I cover westerns year round, okay? Maybe some of you will do that. I think it'd be cool. There's enough of them. William McLeod Rain was a superb writer, so you can get involved in him as well. I was never a big fan of Max Brand, but I recognize and acknowledge his influence. He was a good writer. I just sometimes think that he was a little ponderous. But there are so many others from that period, and I'll cover them. As far as L'Amour goes, it's not going to happen this month, but there is a book of his that was published in the early 1950s. It's called Guns of the Timberlands. And if you get a chance, read that book too. And the reason I'm not covering it here too much is because I'm going to give it an episode of its own. And the reason I'm doing that is because It's one of Lamore's books where I collect every different edition I can. So every time there's a new cover, Guns of the Timberlands, I get that. I think I have them all. It was made into a movie with Alan Ladd. It's not a bad film. And in that episode, which will probably appear here in the fall, I'm going to explain to you why it's not his best Western, but why it's my favorite Louis L'Amour Western, Guns of the Timberlands. So until I post my episode on that wonderful book, why don't you find it, read it? It's short. It's about the same length as High Lonesome, and put out a video about it. I like to hear different opinions on books. You know, Kevin Towle, is that your name? Kevin, I hope I pronounced your name right. He has a great BookTube channel, and he talks about a wide variety of books, and he's a Stephen King fan, and I believe a collector, and he has some differing views than I do, but he also has some common views that we share. For example, we both agree that the Tommy Knockers is a better book than most people ever have given it credit. So he read a Louis L'Amour, and it was The Quick and the Dead, which is a pretty good book. I'm really excited to see differing opinions. We don't have to agree on everything, guys. Share ideas. You know, what worked for you, what doesn't work. What works for me with L'Amour is his attention to detail, the fact that he is one of those writers who acknowledges and recognizes that the landscape is part of the Western mythology and the Western reality. He gets that. The characters are fully drawn characters. You get sucked into it. And the bad guys are bad guys. They wear black hats. So, anyways, that's my plug for June on the Range for Louis L'Amour. And I've got some fishing to do here. I'm going to get back to the saloon, which is behind me and around the corner, which I showed you a little bit of that. And in the meantime, my friends, ride high, ride tall in that saddle, stand tall and ride high, ride the high country. Stay well, stay happy, feed your brain, read a Western, please.
Howdy.
You're a pretty good shot. I'd like to take you up to the hayloft.
Well, the hayloft is better than the cactus path.
Go. Yeah, let's take a walk down to the pier and see what's going on down here at the cabin. My wife and brother-in-law are out there fishing, and Jan just caught a fish. Sent me a picture of it, so let's just take a quick look down here. Nice. Alright, this is very nice. We have good weather today. We've had a real string since April. It's early May now, and things have been very cold, but now they're warming up, and this is going to be nice. I have yet to be on the lake today because they're out there. So I will get out there very soon. Okay, I'm going to walk back up and get my fishing pole, and once I get that fishing pole in my hand, we will go fishing, and the bar is right over there, of course. Here we go.